let's talk about a couple of key basics you need to get started on your first assignment. These are going to be basic rules for good composure of single photographs, as well as good rules for putting together multiple photographs in a photo story. To start off with, let's start with the easiest, most simple, and maybe most important basic rule of photography, and that is the rule of thirds. If you don't learn anything else in this class, hopefully you will pick up on how important the rule of thirds is to making a good photograph. The rule of thirds is this. Imagine you've got a square, and that square is the photograph you're taking, all the stuff that's happening in the visual reference, the visual frame of your photograph. And now envision that you draw lines, two lines going down, two lines going left to right, and that those lines then cut up the section, both top to bottom and left to right, into three different squares, three different bricks. Now where those points of intersection are, we've got one here, got one here, got one here, we've got one here. The rule of thirds says that we want our focal point, we want our action, we want the thing that the person who looks at our photograph sees first. We want that to be roughly on one of those intersecting points where the gray dots are. We're never going to be perfect with this, but we want to try our hardest to position things in the third line instead of the dead center. And that's really the goal here. What we want to get out of the habit of in this class is putting the thing you're taking a picture of dead center in the middle of the photograph. Now, why does this matter? Why is it that we think and our brain interprets that photographs that have the subject in the thirds is more visually appealing? And the answer is we don't really know. We think it may have something to do with the golden circle, which is a mathematical concept of nature, and people have applied this to natural beauty before. And that if you apply the rule of thirds to it, you end up with the spiral indefinitely happening kind of in the realm of one of the thirds. That's just a cool guess. I have no idea if that's right or not. Now this is going to be relatively easy to line up when you're taking a picture of a still object that's not moving around, not jumping, not running, etc. Or if it's a narrow object, because then you can really line it up. So for example, if I was taking a picture of this wonderful lighthouse, it's easy to put the lighthouse in the third, or put it roughly on the line of the thirds, because lighthouses don't move, and lighthouses are relatively tall and skinny. But if you notice, this is a representation of the rule of thirds in the sense that the lighthouse is not in the dead center of the photograph. It is off to the side. And the lighthouse is the thing that your eye goes to first. It is the dominant subject of the photograph. It's a little bit harder when you're dealing with things that move around. You're dealing with things that can fly away, like this giant weird bird. A way to get around this is to take lots and lots of pictures. The more pictures you take, the more likely you are to get one where your focal point, the thing that your eye goes to first, is happening in the rule of thirds, happening on one of the third lines. So this is an example of a photograph of this weird bird. I would say the bird's eyeball is roughly where your eye goes to first, and that is positioned nearly perfectly on one of these third line grids. And if you notice also, this neck of the bird and the head of the bird are also taking place in one of the third quadrants, as well as the beak here coming down to a point in the third quadrant. The main focal area is this red patch in the eyeball, and that is happening here in the third sector of the photograph. And that is really the rule of thirds. The thing that you're taking a picture of, the focal point of it should not be dead center. It should be off to the side, top or bottom, left or right, roughly on one of the third lines. Now how you actually accomplish this, aside from just taking lots and lots of pictures, there's other things you can do. So for example, if you're shooting on a DSLR, or if you're shooting on a point and shoot camera, you can oftentimes turn on a setting that will show grid lines over your screen. This is especially helpful for point and shoot cameras where you're actually using the screen to take most of your pictures. And that little grid line that it puts over, you can use to help line up where your shots are going to be. You can help put things on third lines that way. And if you're using a smartphone for this class, if that's your main method of taking pictures, don't worry either, because nearly every single camera on the market today in your settings has the ability to turn on a grid line. It has a setting to turn on a rule of thirds style grid line. So as you're lining things up in your shots, you know to put things roughly on those third lines. So for example, my phone, which is a cheap Android phone, even I was able to figure out the settings to turn the rule of third grid line on, and I'm able to line up the shot where most of the focal point, or the central focal point, is happening on the upper third line. So this is the rule of thirds, and again, this is maybe one of the most simple, but one of the most important basic rules for taking a good photograph. Now, another key point here for the very basics of putting together a good photo story is that you absolutely have to have variation. You have to vary things up. And what I mean by variation is the placement of yourself, the placement of your body, where you are in relation to the subject of the photograph itself. You need to move yourself around these scenes. And that will be, to start off with, the distance from the subject to you, which means that sometimes you need to get really close to the subject. Sometimes you need to be far away from the subject. But if you have a whole photo story where you are the exact same distance away from your subject for all 20 photographs, that's going to be a really boring, probably sea-level photo story. So you want to make sure that you are having a nice variation of distance to and from the subject. And the way to think about this is think about how much of the subject you can actually see. Now let's turn this into some vocabulary that we can use to all get on the same page here. So some of your photo stories are going to involve lots of medium shots. A medium shot is where you can see the full body of the person. Either the full body or at least like the knee level and up, but most of the whole person is in the shot. Now we're going to look at some photo examples. This is from a photo story looking at some of the large protests going on in the country of Venezuela. And so if we're looking at medium shots, this is a really good medium shot. The subject is the person holding the flag, and their entire body is in the photograph. If this was closer, this would not be a medium shot, but this is a medium shot. This is a picture of someone throwing a smoke grenade. He's wearing a smoke mask or a gas mask and a bike helmet. This is a medium shot because it is the entire person in the photograph. Thinking about this in terms of what you can see of the subject, it's their whole body. Now, where people, especially who are new at this, run into problems is they turn in photo stories that are 20 medium shots. You need more than just medium shots. So the next step is a close shot or a close-up shot. And a close-up shot is a picture of a person that is the waist and up. So roughly the waist part of their body and up, which means you're closer to them, which means you get more facial expression, you get more of a sense of their emotion, and it's a little bit more of a dramatic shot. So this is a close-up shot. This is roughly the person's waist and up. The photographer is actually close enough that the top of their head is cut off. I don't love that about this picture, but I still get it. So this is a close-up shot. This is the waist and up. This is a close-up shot as well, even though we wouldn't think about this as a close-up shot necessarily, because it looks like it's shot from a distance with a zoom. The way it is zoomed in, you only see the waist and up of the person. So we would call this a close shot. And you want to vary your medium shots and your close shots of the subjects in your photo stories. Now let's say we want to get even closer than that. What's even closer than a close-up? Well, that's what we call a crash shot. A crash shot is going to be the shoulders or neck of the subject and up. So it is close in on their face. It is close up right on their facial expression. And a lot of the times the background is going to be blurred. It's going to be out of focus. Their face is in focus, everything behind their face is out of focus. So their facial expression and how they look is part of the story of that given photograph. So for example, this is a close-up of a shot of one of the protesters. We get a sense of their facial expression. We see their makeup, we see the flower in their hair, we see that their hair is a little disheveled, but everything behind them is really blurry and out of focus because this is a crash shot on their face. Here's another close-up crash shot of the protesters. This one is a woman holding a flower. But it is a zoom up, it is a close shot of just their face, and we call this a crash shot. So that's 3 different levels of closeness with your subject. Medium, which is the whole body, close, which is waist and up, and crash, which is neck and up, or shoulders and up. And all of these are very good at varying levels. And you want to make sure you're getting, you don't have to mathematically equate equals of all of them, but you do need to mix them up. Now you can also get a good sense of space, a good sense of distance if you want to have a far away shot. That's okay too. So something like this is someone who's mopping up after a store was looted. This is a far away shot. Not only is their whole body in it, but they're actually very small proportionally as a part of the story. Now what you don't want is an entire photo story of these. That'll be a really bad photo story. But if you have a lot of close shots and crash shots to give a sense of variation, maybe back really far away and take a picture of the person from a distance. Because it does help set the scene. You get a scene of the stores with the empty shelves and the stuff on the floor she's mopping up. And this is a distance shot of the crowd itself. You can see the tear gas canisters. You can see people running. It's a very hectic shot. But you don't get a sense of this scene unless you, as the photographer, back far away and take this shot from a distance. But the main point here is to vary. You don't want to turn in a photo story that is all one type of distance. You need to have a good mix of different distances. The other key point to vary up is your angle. Now, if your distance is how close or far you are from the subject, the angle is the range in which you are taking it high to low. High can be climbing up on something and shooting down. Low can be calling low and shooting up. There's also eye level. Eye level is the basic sense of you are on roughly the same level as the subject. Now, eye level is not the level that an average person stands. Eye level is the eye level of the subject. So if you have a subject that is laying on the ground, eye level with them would be you laying on the ground and taking a picture of them straight ahead. So that's an important key difference in the terminology here. But there is high, eye level, and low, and you want to mix this up. You want to put some variation in this in your photo stories. So this is a good example of a high photo. This is from a photo package of refugees in the Sudan in Africa. And this is a high shot. So clearly the photographer has climbed up on something to shoot downwards towards this crowd of people. And it allows you to get a sense of expanse, a better sense of the space that's involved. This is another more slight high shot. This isn't someone climbing on something. This is someone just holding their camera up in the air as they take the picture. And you can actually tell, one, because you're looking down on our main subject, but also in the shadow you can actually see the photographer's arms holding the camera up. This is an eye level shot of our subjects and the distance, but this is eye level. You're on the same level of height that they are as sources. What you don't want to have is a lot of just eye level shots. Just eye level shots with no other variation in angle are really boring, so you have to mix up high and low. Low level shots, this is a low level shot. You can tell that the photographer has crouched down a little bit and is shooting more in an upwards direction. Low level shots are a little easier than high level shots to accomplish, and they're generally used to make the subject seem more dire or more epic, to make the thing seem more dramatic. So if you just need a good way to make your photograph seem more dramatic, try crouching down and shooting upwards, and you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish by doing that. So this has been a basic look at some key things to do for your first assignment. Remember, you want to vary up the distance from the subject, you want to vary up your angle, and you always want to practice rule of thirds.